Hello everyone, this is Onia. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys something very interesting that I discovered within the last few weeks going through the book of Obadiah. As you guys know, project, my Bible project has the primary goal of reconstructing the original version of all the books of the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Apocrypha books. And the best way to go about this is in particular to focus on the Old Testament books because we've got Hebrew, we've got the Septuagint, we've got the Dead Sea Scrolls, we've got a lot of different resources to help reconstruct those books. And as we reconstruct the Old Testament books, it will help us reconstruct other books that we no longer have the original Hebrew of. Because as we're doing the reconstruction and the textual criticism work for the Old Testament books, we can begin to compile a word equivalent document where you have these words. When you see these words in Greek, you can assume that the original Hebrew is roughly this. I want to develop something like that so that when we don't have the original Hebrew, we can use the Greek, the Latin, the other languages and have a very confident idea of what the original text was. So with that said, for the first book that I want to do for my Bible project, I'm almost certainly going to be doing the book of Obadiah. And the reason I choose the book of Obadiah is because it's so short. It provides a very good practice book where you only have the one chapter, so you can take a lot of time with it to really master how the translation process is going to be done for this project. So that's why, in particular, I really feel inclined to start with Obadiah of all the books of the Old Testament. So I've been just doing a little bit of a preliminary glance at the book of Obadiah, and after a little bit of research, I discovered that the book of Obadiah was actually quoted by the prophet Jeremiah in the book of Jeremiah. There are several verses in the book of Jeremiah which are a clear quotation of the passage from Obadiah, and that's very important for textual criticism purposes. When you have two different books having the same passage and one is quoting the other, you can look at the streams of transmission textually, and you can see, okay, this version preserved the Hebrew in this way and the other version preserved it in a different way. And using that strategy is probably the most reliable way of reconstructing the original Hebrew of these books, because of having two different witnesses. So now let me share the screen here. Okay, it should be there for everyone to see. And I'm going to be going through with you guys the differences, or the unique things here. I've lined up the Hebrew of each passage in particular, and as well as the English. So we've got here Obadiah 1:1 with Jeremiah 49:7 and 14, and then Obadiah 1:2, Jeremiah 49:15. Obadiah 1:3-4 corresponds with Jeremiah 49:16, and then Obadiah 1:5 corresponds with Jeremiah 49:9. So now we're going to go through some of this. The first beginning section right here corresponds with this, and it's virtually identical. So that right there. Now you got this, and this is, let's see, going to the English here, the herd. Okay, so we have here, or this is a report actually, a rumor or a report. This is we have heard. This is I have heard. Already there's a difference here. Already there's a difference of we versus I. So in the Masoretic text of Obadiah, we have heard, and in the Masoretic text of Jeremiah, which is quoting this passage from Obadiah, we have I have heard. Now what's interesting also is the Septuagint also has it as I have heard in Obadiah. So we have three witnesses against the one. Only the Masoretic of Obadiah says we have heard. All the other witnesses say I have heard. Septuagint of Obadiah and the Masoretic and Septuagint of Jeremiah, they all say I have heard. So we know that the we portion of the Masoretic text is in fact corrupt for that reason. Now we go right here and we have, usually they translate this something like to send. Now this is, you can notice that there's fewer Hebrew words in the Obadiah version as compared to Jeremiah. So if we compare, and there's a slightly different order as well. But if we compare why that is, we're going to see that it's evident that the scribe of Obadiah has condensed the information. And we know, comparing the Septuagint and Masoretic and many other books, we've seen very often how the scribes condense passages because it's basically saying the same thing, so they shorten it for that reason. So you got right here in Obadiah, arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. That's essentially the same in Septuagint and Masoretic text for Obadiah. But for Jeremiah, we've got gather ye together and come up against her and rise up to the battle. So it's three different sections. They're basically the same, saying the same thing, but it's a little bit longer and more repetitive. So you can see where the scribes might have condensed this to say, instead of and come up against her and rise up to the battle, or rise ye up to war, you can just condense it to and rise up against her to battle. So, and also there's just slightly different translations here, but they basically mean the same thing. You got an ambassador being sent versus a message being sent in the Septuagint translation. But then you've got, you have in the Jeremiah Masoretic ambassador, Septuagint, they translate it as messengers. So that might be a slight difference in the Greek, but corresponding, since the Jeremiah Masoretic corresponds with Obadiah in this, it seems that the singular is the correct, or whatever the Hebrew is for that is the correct rendering. Now sometimes the Septuagint renders things plural even though the Hebrew is singular. So it could just be the same Hebrew for all of it. Anyways, now I'm going to go on to the most unique and most important, demonstrate the very interesting feature of corruption in this book of Obadiah. We've got an almost identical passage. Now, I'll read the English. Masoretic Obadiah. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, or the Gentiles. Thou art greatly despised. Thou art greatly despised. Thou art greatly dishonored. The Septuagint says, excuse me, not Septuagint. The Jeremiah in the Masoretic says, for lo, I will make thee small among the heathen and despised among men. Septuagint does not have for lo, but because the Obadiah, both Masoretic and Septuagint, have behold, which is the same as lo, different translation, because they all have it, three witnesses against one, we're going to go with the Septuagint of Jeremiah has condensed it incorrectly, it seems, based on the other witnesses. So we got a problem here. One is, thou art greatly despised. The other is, despised among men. Two totally different meanings. But when you look at the Hebrew, you can see an interesting thing. So at the beginning, all we have in the beginning is this key, this word key, which sometimes is translated as that or therefore or since or such, different renderings like that. For, they translate it as for in this case. Behold, these are all the same Hebrew right here. But now we get to this interesting thing. In the Masoretic, this word means you or thou, and this is greatly. So that's why you see greatly despised or greatly dishonored. Thou art greatly despised. But in Jeremiah, this word's not there. Instead, there's a prefix, and it's a different word. But notice what's very interesting is that these are the exact same letters in Hebrew. So to show you, Obadiah says at ad. Jeremiah says Adam. So you've got the same three letters, M-A-D and A-D-M, just different order. That can't be coincidence. So to explain something for textual criticism, very often this happens. People might think it doesn't happen very often, but it does. We have plenty of examples. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but I've seen examples of this, and scholars acknowledge that this happens quite a bit, where scribes who write sloppily, or they, when we do typos all the time when we're typing. I type something and I accidentally switch the letters. So I don't have a good example, but, okay, so let's say I'm trying to say Jeremiah says, and I say Jeremiah says. That's an accident. It's a typo. Well, the thing is, these typos did not only come into existence in modern times. They came into existence when scribes were writing it out. And the problem is the scribes did not have spell checker either, or autocorrect. In some ways, that's a good thing that they didn't have autocorrect. But so, as you can see, it could be very easy for a scribe to accidentally write the wrong word. What makes it even more likely is that in Hebrew, there are many more words than what we have in English for the letters that are available. Now, this is slightly incorrect, but it works for the main purposes. Basically, Hebrew very often does not have vowels in the text. So imagine you got the English. Let me think of a good example. You've got let's see. I'm trying to think of a good word here. Let's see. Okay, here, we'll just say beat, okay? The word beat. There's also beat. There's also bat. There's bit. A bunch of different many different words. Then there's also tub, tip, top, tap. Okay, you got different words here. So when you have it's essentially like in Hebrew, instead of having all these different words, you have that and that. That's all you have. And BT could have the EA in it. It could have the EE or A or I. It could have different vowels, and it's not always written down. So if you accidentally write the wrong word in Hebrew, instead of BT, you write TB. If that's how it was in English, well, now you just made a different word just by one different letter. Whereas how we do it in English, because we have more letters, you know, bat, if you write it as that, well then it's not going to be a word. We know, oh, okay, that's a typo because it doesn't, there's no other word. But because Hebrew works differently than English, you have something more like this, where the letters, you reverse the letters, it makes a new word. No matter what letters you put in there, it makes a new word. Almost always, you switch the letters around, it's a new word automatically. There's very few instances where you switch the letters and it's gibberish. Almost always, when you switch the letters randomly, you can just switch the letters and it'll make an actual word, no matter what you do. So that's how it's so easy. It'd be so easy for the letters to be switched. And that's what it seems like has happened here. So what do we deal with the thou art, and the bet? Now the bet usually means in or among. But if we look, something very interesting here. Hold on. Okay. So if we look, bet has, look at what bet means for the Hebrew. It can mean in, and it can also mean with. In, with. Now let's look at this word, without the final letter. See, right here, it has the letter hey. That's hey right here. It's the same two first letters. So when you go to the first two letters, what we see for the Hebrew, it can mean a definite direct object marker. It can mean you or thou, sign, but it can also mean to or with. With. So you've got the bet means with, and you've got the aleph tav meaning with. And again, this aleph tav is not the aleph tav that people like to go on about, thinking that it's something special or that it's the Messiah. No. In this case, it's a word that means with. So you can see kind of dishonored with man, dishonored with man. It should be the letters should be in a different order. This hey should not be there. So what I suggest is that the original Hebrew looked something like this, where that hey was not there, so it read dishonored with man. Then some scribes accidentally switched the letter order and made it MAD, which makes it mean greatly or very. So it rendered it, basically the scribes were like, wait a second. The scribes who were copying the flawed version, they saw, okay, it means dishonored with very, dishonored with greatly, which doesn't make sense. It's bad grammar. So they knew that something was wrong, and they tried to figure out what could possibly be wrong. And they saw, okay, well, maybe a hey needs to be added. Maybe the hey needs to be added, and it means thou. So hey was added to make the passage try to have sense, because without the hey, it didn't make sense as it was spelt. But it was just one slight little error of the wrong letter order which caused the scribes to change it. So we can use Obadiah to know, okay, the original was at, and we can see that the scribe of Jeremiah altered the original as well. But the scribe of Jeremiah was more faithful to the original text, and instead of completely butchering the meaning, they preserved the meaning, but they updated the language to a more modernized way of doing it. They used a synonym. Synonyms are the same basic meaning, but two different words, two different phrases, but they basically mean the same thing. And you can essentially interchange them, and there's no real difference. And that's what's happened here. At is the original. Jeremiah scribe changed it to bet with the same synonymous meaning. The Obadiah scribe corrected the word man to vary greatly, and they knew that didn't make sense. The later scribes saw that it didn't make sense, so they altered the word at to thou art, and that doesn't make sense at all. So we know that Jeremiah is the more accurate text there. So that's pretty amazing, because we can use Jeremiah to find the errors in Obadiah in some of these verses. So I really am impressed by that. Now we go to the next, and we see in Obadiah, it says, "The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground?" I'll stop there for a second. The book of Jeremiah says, "Thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill." The Septuagint renders it, "Thine insolence has risen up against thee, the fierceness of thine heart has burst the holes of the rocks, it has seized upon the strength of a lofty hill." And both the Masoretic and Septuagint of Jeremiah, what they say in their heart, "Who shall bring me down to the ground?" And I believe that was not part of Jeremiah originally, because Jeremiah is just quoting Obadiah, and he doesn't have to quote the whole thing. So it's a good reason, there's a good reason to think that the original Jeremiah did not have that section in Obadiah, "Who shall bring me down to the ground?" He says in his heart, "Who shall bring me down to the ground?" That was originally part of Obadiah, but Jeremiah did not originally include that in his quotation. Now, also interesting is that we have Obadiah saying habitation is high or exalted, and that's Obadiah, and then Jeremiah has it as of the hill, or strength of a lofty hill. And it appears to be the case that the Hebrew of height is the same as, or is once again, it's a synonym of the word for hill. The word for hill in Hebrew more literally means something that's raised up, high. So we've got two different words that basically mean high or height, but the one is used more often to mean hill. The other is used more commonly for just height in general. So you've got the two different synonyms meaning essentially the same thing. But over time, the Hebrew language changed and developed different nuances of these words. Also, the Jeremiah is longer once again. The Obadiah just has the pride of thine heart. To see the Jeremiah has insolence or terribleness has deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart. The Septuagint of Jeremiah renders it as the fierceness of thine heart has burst the holes of the rocks, and that makes more sense grammatically as compared to what they say, thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart. It's a little worded a little bit awkwardly in the grammar. But so it appears that the longer text is once again, in fact, the original, and the scribe of Obadiah has condensed the information. And we can compare the Hebrew here. Let's go to the, once again, right here. We've got, let's see, right here, terribleness. That's what they have right here. Okay, so now we see this word, Esiac, Esiatic. So we look at what that is. Esia, it looks like deceived. So this is the word for deceived. Has deceived. And this is the direct object marker. Deceived thee. They're both the same thing, but they're spelled slightly different. So you've got this one is deceived thee, and here it's deceived thee. And both are valid grammatically. But this appears to be a more archaic way of saying it, and this appears to be the abbreviated version. So it appears in the oldest form of the language, you would say this, apparently. Now also we see different word order. Here is Zidun at the beginning of Obadiah, the verse, but in Jeremiah's quotation, it comes after the Esia. Then we've got Libak, which is thy heart. That comes before Esia in Obadiah, and it comes after in Jeremiah. But what's interesting is that in both Obadiah and Jeremiah, it has the word form, the couplet, Zidun Libak. So it's intended to be right next to each other. But it was the placement of Esia which was up for debate of where it would be. And you got the same Hebrew right here. Now, Jeremiah has the definite article there. Generally speaking, when the inclusion of a definite article is more authentic than not including it. It appears from my studies, it seems like the scribes more often removed the hey because they found it unnecessary. So Jeremiah's inclusion of it is probably more accurate in that way. Now let's see here. Oh yeah, that's right. As I said, there's slightly different renderings. If we look again, it was habitation, whose habitation is high, versus holdest the height of the hill. So holdest height of the hill, who let's see, high habitation. So it appears that this is the more accurate rendering. Once again, the longer form. So Jeremiah's form is more likely to be the original. And the scribe condensed it for some reason. Also, something discussed here, ADM, ADM, and MAD. We've got something similar here for SBT and TPS. P and B are very similar in sound and are often confused in many languages, but including Hebrew. So you've got the different order of SBT and TPS. That could be a change accidentally as well for Obadiah's text. As I said, what they say in their heart is probably not in the original of Jeremiah, but it is in Obadiah. Then you've got here something interesting is they both basically mean though. So once again, they're synonyms. But we've got a whole clause missing in Jeremiah, which makes it awkward, which makes the whole thing awkward. We'll read it. We've got, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. We've got in the Jeremiah, though thou shouldst make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord. The problem is that grammatically doesn't make sense. It would make sense to say, though thou shouldst make thy nest as high as the eagle's nest, that would make sense, or as high as the eagle makes its nest, but the way it's worded doesn't make sense. Also, the English translations try to make it look like it's different. So you got, though thou exalt thyself as, well, let me go to the actual, take a look at this. We've got right here, though thou exalt, Geba, so they're including Geba right here. Tigabia, though thou exalt as an eagle, and though between stars set or put thy nest. But now we look right here, the corresponding section, and you've got now they have it as high. They have it high. Geba is rendered high. So there's two Gebas. There's of the hill, and then there's this one, Geba. But there's no as. There's no as. They're making it up because they're trying to make it sound the same as the other passage. So, or they're trying to make it make sense when it doesn't make sense grammatically. So they're adding words and ideas. So this, they're translating as high, though make high as eagle thy nest. But it's the same exact Hebrew in the verses. It's just the extra clause is missing. So right here, it should be exalt as an eagle, and though between stars put thy nest. Instead, they just have it as exalt as an eagle thy nest. It makes it sound like the as high as the eagle. It makes it sound like the connection is how high the eagle is, but it's very clear from the parallel. It's talking about the nest of the eagle and not the eagle itself. So, well, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. In the Masoretic of, or not the Masoretic, in the Obadiah, you've got exalting thyself as the eagle and setting thy nest among the stars. But in Jeremiah, you have the nest as high as the eagle, and the analogy doesn't really make sense that much. You could make it work, but it sounds awkward. So the way that Obadiah renders it makes more sense and suggests that Jeremiah's scribes corrupted it and removed that clause. Also, Septuagint does not have saith the Lord, but all other witnesses have saith the Lord. So we do see examples of the scribes messing it up. The scribes of the Septuagint removed saith the Lord, even though it's in Obadiah, even though it's in the Masoretic of Jeremiah. And we know that Jeremiah Septuagint is much shorter than the Masoretic text. So it appears the Septuagint removed a lot of stuff from the original text of Jeremiah, since Obadiah is corroborating the longer form. And then finally, we've got the if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night. I like the Septuagint translation better. Where wouldst thou have been cast away? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? When we look at Jeremiah, however, it says it's in a different order. It's the same two clauses, but different order. So instead of thieves first, it's grape gatherers. If grape gatherers come to thee, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? So right here, grape gatherers come to thee, would they not leave a gleaning or gleaning some grapes? And then the thieves, if thieves came into thee or robbers by night, hold on a second. Hello? Hi. Sorry about that. Just had a quick call from my parents. So anyways, we got if thieves came into thee or robbers by night, where wouldst thou have been cast away? Would they not have stolen enough for themselves? We've got if thieves by night, they will destroy till they have enough. So it appears that Jeremiah is the shorter one here and that it's been corrupted because the way it's worded doesn't make as much sense. Though I suppose that if Jeremiah wrote this originally, he may have just been referring to it in a shortened way. But I don't find that as compelling. I think that because the forms are so closely connected, it appears that we have scribes condensing it once again. So anyways, that's pretty much it for this teaching. I didn't go all the way through Obadiah. These are the main verses that correspond exactly with Jeremiah and Obadiah. there are other allusions that Jeremiah makes to Obadiah, and this whole section that corresponds, Jeremiah is referring to Edom. So it's clearly connected. It's not a coincidence. No way is it coincidence. Oh, let's look at let's see if there was any difference in the Hebrew here. Anything to put here? As I said, it's just slightly different order. So you got getting a beam, so right here, and then this is not here, and you've got in the night, and then this difference. A whole different section here. So let's look there. So thieves came to thee. That clause is not there. Hello, art cut off. It's not there. Or maybe, let's see. Yeah. But then we have, would they not have stolen till they had enough? This right here is their sufficiency, or their enough. So we got this right here, the deem, and that's right here. Now let's go to this verse 9, and let's see what that is. Destroy. So they've got the destroy verb there. Sued. Let me see that one. Let me see that. Okay, they have it as robbers. Now the other one is more straightforward and corresponds more closely, and that's Ambijarim Baulik. And of course, you know, my pronunciation is probably inaccurate in many ways, but Alua Isairu Olilut. Here we've got the same up until here. This is spelled with 2 extra letters, Hey Lamed Wa Aleph, and this one's just Lamed Aleph. According to the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see the older form is in fact the Lua, and then Isaru versus Isairu. There's the extra yod there, and again, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the extra letters there are, usually the more original that version is. Otherwise, that's essentially the same form for that. So we've got there, that's the sections from Jeremiah. I hope you enjoyed this teaching. This is a little bit of an introduction to the book of Obadiah. There's much more research that needs to be done for this book. But the book is somewhat pretty straightforward. I do have a theory that this book probably is an excerpt from a longer book of Obadiah, because it doesn't make sense for there to be one little tiny book of Obadiah. There has to be more of Obadiah's story, a greater, longer book. You know, you've got for the book of Enoch. Let's look at the book of Enoch. SummaScriptura.com. You've got for Enoch at the very end, you have another book which Enoch wrote for his son Methuselah. So it's a single chapter. We've got a book of Enoch that's 1 chapter long, And you could easily see how a scribe could take this book and put it into another book, and then that could become part of the Bible. Allegedly, that could have happened, or hypothetically is the correct word. So I believe the same thing happened with Obadiah, where one little chapter of a prophecy of Obadiah to Edom, he wrote it in a book, just like Enoch wrote different books, and it was collected together as a single book of Obadiah's prophecies. You've got one book of Obadiah's prophecy directed towards Edom, and for some reason the scribes decided to just take that one portion of Obadiah, the book of Obadiah, and excerpt it and make it its own unique book. Because there's just no way that it's just so piddly like that. Another thing that kind of reinforces that idea is the fact that most of the prophet books have initial introduction. So you've got, hold on a second. I'm just going to show you quickly because I have a little time left. Okay. Okay. Did I get all the books here? Let's see. Let's see. So, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah. You guys, okay, good. So we go, all right, for Hosea. The word of the Lord that came into Hosea in the days of such and such kings. Amos, the words of Amos in the days of which kings. Joel does not have it. Obadiah does not. Jonah does not. But Micah does. Nineveh does not. Habakkuk does not. Zephaniah does. Haggai has it. Zechariah has it. Malachi does not. But we also have Isaiah 1:1, Ezekiel 1:1, Jeremiah 1:1, Daniel 1:1. Let's look at these quickly. In days. He gives a date there. Daniel gives a date. Let's see, Jeremiah 1. Yeah, and Jeremiah gives a date also. So we have reason to think that it's very possible that Obadiah is a short excerpt of the original book of Obadiah, and we'll never know the full extent of the book of Obadiah unless we find a copy of it. But we have to believe that there is some book of Obadiah out there. We do have evidence that Obadiah was a prophet in his own right elsewhere, and that he was a pupil of Elijah. So let me read that. That's right here. Lives of the prophets. We've got for Obadiah. He was from the region of Shechem, of the field of Beth Haccarim. He was a pupil of Elijah, and having done much in his service, he was spared from death by him. He was that third captain of 50 whom Elijah spared, and he went down with him to Ahaziah. Afterward, leaving the service of the king, he became a prophet, and upon his death, he was buried with his fathers. So we have to believe that Obadiah wrote another book, and it's just lost now. But the scribes, for some reason, they felt that a message directed towards Edom was appropriate for their collection they wanted to make. See, I'm pretty confident that someone invented the collection of the 12 minor prophets. They made a collection. There was a theme that they had. they looked at all different prophet books and they put together the prophets that they thought went together well, had a good message that joined together. But nowhere is this best seen of the nature of how it's clear that they were taking things and just jumbling them together and sometimes taking them from a longer text. The book of Jonah. The book of Jonah is just very different than all the other books, which suggests it also was excerpted from a longer book of Jonah. And we have good evidence that there was another book of Jonah, including a prophecy mentioned in the Old Testament, which I know it's a little off topic from Obadiah, but it's just interesting, so I'm going to share it with you guys. 2 Kings, I don't know, 10 to 20, somewhere in there. Yeah, so we got right here. And all this is 2 Kings chapter 14. It says, all the people of Judah took Azariah, which was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. He built Elath and restored it to Judah. After that, the king slept with his fathers. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria and reigned 41 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He restored the coast of Israel from the entering of Hamath unto the sea of the plain, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which he spake by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, which was of Gath-hepher. So we've got an extra prophecy of Jonah, nowhere mentioned in the Bible elsewhere, but it's quoted casually in this 2 Kings book. So we know that there had to be another book of Jonah's prophecy, and the book of Jonah that we have now is just an excerpt. Either someone did a summary of it, or they condensed the original, or something. We've clearly got the full original distorted, and for a purpose. It seems evident that Jonah's prophecy to Nineveh was excerpted from the longer form so that it could correspond with Nahum's prophecy against Nineveh, because Nahum prophesied as well against Nineveh. So Nineveh, right here, burn of Nineveh. So you've got the scribe who's like, okay, so we've got a prophecy of Nahum about Nineveh. And we've got, let's see, okay, let's find the other prophecy that corresponds with it. So the scribes put together these different prophets into a single book and presented it as a theme, a thematic collection of the prophets about different topics. That's what the evidence best seems to indicate. But more research needs to be done on all that stuff, and that's all, some of it's just theoretical speculation, but it's very good speculation and very reliable ideas that are almost certainly true. Anyways, if you have any questions or comments, please share. I'd love to hear them. And I hope you enjoyed this. There's going to be much more interesting things in the future as we dive deeper into the Hebrew and the different manuscripts and the different sources and parallel texts that we have. There's just so much out there. It's going to blow you guys' mind. God bless you guys. Shalom.